Hello, first-year string players. This video is a review of our second lesson, and make sure you have your packet out in front of you. It will look like this, although mine is in black and white and yours is in color. It says learning to read notes, and that's exactly what we worked on in this lesson. Note reading is a difficult skill, but it is a necessary skill if you're going to be successful with playing your instrument. And so my goal by the end of the year is that we are all very competent note readers, but of course, like with everything, we are starting out simple. You all are only going to read 4 notes today. And so let's take a look at this first page. You can see the first thing it talks about is something called the staff. And I have a staff drawn on the board back here. And the staff is 5 horizontal lines. And we number those lines starting from the bottom. So I'm going to number my staff. 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. We number from the bottom starting with 1. Of course, these 5 lines also make 4 spaces in between, so we also number those 1 through 4 starting from the bottom. 1, 2, 3, 4. With every note, the first thing you're going to want to identify is it a line note or a space note? So I'm going to draw a line note right now so you can see. Okay, it might be filled in, it might not be filled in, but this is a line note, and you know it's a line note because the line is going through it. And if I were to ask you to describe where this note is, you would say that note is on the first line. So that note is on the first line. If I drew a note here, you would say that note is on the 5th line. Now, if you had a note in a space, there's not going to be a line going through it like this. That note is in a space, and it is in the 2nd space. So in our lesson, and if you're still having trouble with this, this is something you can do at home, but in our lesson, we practice identifying where notes are. It's going to be important because a lot of times when you look at music, the notes look very similar, except where they are on the staff. Are they a line note or a space note, and which line or space are they in? So make sure this is a skill that you understand. This is something you can practice at home. We will continue to practice it in lessons too. So go ahead and flip to the next page, The Amazing World of Note Reading. This is kind of a play on The Amazing World of Gumball, kind of a cool thing that this lesson book does to keep it interesting. And off to the right-hand side, it says Note Reading Tips in that box on the right. I'm going to go through these because these are excellent tips for note reading and things I want you to think about as you're practicing this week. So first of all, number 1, keep your eyes on the music. You're not reading if you're not looking at the notes. When playing music, you may be tempted to look at your hands or your friends or your teacher, but the notes are written on the page, not on your fingers. So a lot of times, especially with beginning students, they'll either be watching me, watching friends, looking around at the ceiling. That's not helping you because even if you have it memorized, you need to be looking at the page so you can be getting in your head, oh, that's how you read the note A. That's where it is. Right? So always making sure that we are watching our notes, reading our music. 2, practice daily. The more often we practice reading, the easier it gets. So we saw with the first lesson, students who put in the time throughout the week and practiced at least 3 or 4 days, some practiced more, were very successful with learning the homework. So practice daily. 3, they were really nice about this when they said try not to do this. I'm going to say do not do this. So absolutely do not write in the note names. So don't go up to your notes and write A underneath so that you can just read the letter names. It seems like you are helping yourself out by doing that. But what you're really doing is training yourself to read the letters, not the notes. And then when you're in high school, you're not going to be able to read music without writing 8,000 letter names underneath. And it really means that you can't read music. You can just read letter names written underneath. So please take the time to learn it now. Don't write the notes in. Number 4, ask for help. If you're confused or don't understand something, always ask. Someone else in class is most likely wondering the same thing. So make sure if you are confused or lost, ask me either in an email or on Google Classroom or in the lesson because there's a good chance someone else has the same question as you. And number 5, practice reading your music without playing your instrument. Say the notes first out loud and then follow along with your finger, and then you can play. This is what I call say it before we play it. We were already doing this. And so go ahead and take a look at the first exercise of music. So right up here it says reading A. And underneath reading A, you're going to see some notes on a staff. We kind of joked about this in class and said if you had to guess what note you're reading in the exercise called reading A, what note do you think you're reading? And everyone said, oh, we must be reading A. Every one of us learned the note A in our first lesson. And it's going to look different depending on what instrument you play. So I'm not going to tell you what your note looks like, but right now I'd like you to look at your music under reading A and think to yourself, first of all, is it a line or a space note? And second of all, which line or space is it on? Is it a line or space note, and which line or space is it on? That's where A, your A string, is always going to live. We're going to go through, read our notes and our rests, and then we'll play it. Okay, so read it out loud with me. Ready? Here we go. A, rest, rest. A, rest, rest. A, rest. A. Let's play it. Let me grab my violin. So you're going to set up with perfect posture, however your instrument's perfect posture is. If you still have questions about that, you can go back to the first lesson review video. You're going to make your L for pizzicato, put your thumb up against the fingerboard, put your index finger on the string that is A for you. So violins, it's the second string over. Violas and cellos, it's your string, your highest string, your skinniest string. And then bass, it is not your thickest, your lowest string, but your second thickest string. So here's A, and we're going to play this. 1, 2, here we go. A, rest, rest. Rest, rest. A, rest. All right, you just read A. Very nice job. Let's move down to the next one, reading D. Again, if you had to guess what note is in reading D, it is D, your D string. And so we can go through and first of all look and see where it is on the staff. Violins, you'll notice it's below the staff. It's underneath the first line. I would call that the space below the first line. But check for your instrument where the note D is. And we're going to go ahead and read these notes. So ready? Here we go. D, 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 rest, rest. D, D, rest, rest. D, 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 rest. D, D, rest. Let's play it. Instruments up. Pizzicato, left hand L, thumb against the fingerboard. Find your note D. 1, 2, here we go. D, D, D. Rest, rest. Rest, rest. Rest, rest. All right, moving right along. Next one, reading G. Violins, I know yours looks very scary. This G is all the way down, way, way, way below the staff with extra lines, but that's just your open G, right? We just have to memorize that that's what it looks like. But everyone, check out the note under reading G. That is your G string. Again, we all learned how to play that note on our first lesson. Let's go through and read our notes. Here we go. G, rest. G, rest. G, 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 rest. G, rest. G, rest. G, 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 G. Let's play it. 1, 2, here we go. Rest, rest. Rest, rest, rest. Awesome. All right. Move on to the last one on this page, reading C or E. Now, every instrument has a fourth string that we haven't played yet today, and it's your special string. It's one that not every instrument has, something that makes your instrument unique. So violins and bass, you guys have an E string. Violas and cellos, you have a C string. So your note on the bottom line for reading C or E is whatever special string you have. It's an E for violins, an E for bass, a C for viola, and a C for cello. To make sure things aren't super confusing, I'm not going to practice this one with you, but you can do it at home. So go through, read your notes. Notice there's no rests in this one, and then go ahead and play it. And we can flip now together to the next page. So now we just have more practice. We've learned the 4 open strings, the 4 pitches to the open strings on your instrument. And now we have practice going through and reading them. And all of these have just 2 notes in every line. So for example, the first one, reading A and D, has A's and D's. You might need to go back to the first page and check which one was A and which one was D. But again, it should be pretty easy to identify them because you just have to say, is it a line note or a space note, and which line or space does it live on? And that way you can identify it on the second page. So I'm going to go through reading A and D. I'll read my notes, and then we will play it together. Now, reading A and D did have a mistake in it. You were missing a rest. So for most of you, if you were in your lesson, I went through and wrote your rest in the book, at least for violins. I'm not sure if viola, cello, bass have a typo or not in their book. I haven't taught those lesson groups yet, but hopefully you have the edited version in front of you with that extra rest. So here I go, reading notes for reading A and D. A, rest. D, rest, rest. A, D, rest. A, rest, rest. D, A, rest, rest. D, rest. Let's play it. Get that instrument up. Get your index finger on A. That's the first note we play, but also make sure you know where D is because you're going to need to go to that pretty quickly. So 1, 2, here we go. A, rest. D, rest, rest. D, rest, rest, rest. Rest, rest, rest. Awesome. Okay, so I'm not going to go through this whole page right now just for time and because I want you to have a chance to independently go through some of these. But the process that I just used is the process that you should use for all of them. I don't expect you to be able to do them all in one day. I had some students ask that, like, what if I can't get through everything when I practice tomorrow? You don't have to do them all every day. Try to break up the work though so that you get to everything throughout the week. So when you come back to your next lesson, you should be able to play everything from the amazing world of note reading, the first page and everything on the second page, and we will go through those together in class. There's one more thing in the packet, and I just want you to have a chance to see it. We're not going to go over it, but if you flip to the next 2 pages, you'll recognize the titles and the graphics of these. These are the tunes we played for our first lesson. I Like to Eat Cake, Firefly, Shepherd's Dance, Birthday Wishes. These all use open strings. When we played them during the first week, they weren't written on the staff with the notes. They were just kind of floating notes with letter names written in them. And so if you would like a challenge, you can go back and play these songs again. I know they were popular among many students. You can play them again, but practice your note reading this time. So that's a challenge. You do not have to do that. I just gave you that in case you wanted it. But I do expect everyone to do the amazing world of note reading. All right, so if you have any questions, let me know. Everyone's doing a great job so far, and I will see you guys in your next lesson.